Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of The Untold Truth. This is the podcast where we speak truth to power, and where we literally punch racism in the face and keep and holding our oppressors accountable. Tonight, we are lucky to have Francesca Albanese with us, who is an international lawyer specializing in human rights in the Middle East. And since May 22, she has been serving as the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the human rights situation in Palestine territory occupied since 1967. She's an affiliate scholar at Georgetown University Institute for the Study of International Migration and acclaimed author of Palestinian Refugees in International Law, Oxford 2020. And you have to help me here, Francesca. I don't know if I'm going to say this right. It's Jack Hughes. Is that right? 100%.
Yes, that's right.
Cool. 2024. And her academic work focuses on forced displacement, international law, and the legal dynamics of Israeli Palestinian context. Albanese co founded. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. A little bit of self-promotion for this baby that costed 5 years of my life.
Well, it's your platform, use it. Albanese co-founded a global network on the question of Palestine and leads migration research in the Arab world with the ARDD think tank, and she works with the OHCHR and the UNRWA and lectures internationally. As special rapporteur, she has authored influential reports on mass incarceration, violations of self-determination, and the erasure of Palestinian childhoods and genocide. And she's also known for a principled stance on justice, insisting that impartiality means confronting power imbalances with integrity, resolving the question of Palestine. She affirms and requires the courage to pursue justice, ending genocide, occupation, and apartheid, so all may live in peace and freedom. Francesca, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
And our theme tonight is From Ruins We Rise, Palestinian Healing and the Resistance in the Face of Genocide. And so we're going to jump right into that. And I'm going to just ask, things have been so bad, and it's really turned even worse over the last few weeks or months since Trump has come into power. So for someone like yourself who works in the intersection of law and human rights, how would you describe the current legal framing of what is happening in Palestine, the genocide, the apartheid occupation, and why is it accurate language so important to use in this context?
Yeah, what has happened and what is happening, in fact, in Palestine, it's a destructive assault, which is resulting in killing of people, of Palestinians, infliction of severe bodily or mental harm, Palestinians, and the creation of conditions of life calculated to lead Palestinians, particularly those living in Gaza, to destruction. You see Gaza from satellite imagery today, and you can see that most of the Gaza Strip has been leveled, and it continues. And so many people have been killed just by, what the numbers we have are over 50,000 now, with 18,000 children. But these are those who have been killed by bombs and bullets, sniper fire. We don't know how many died because of lack of medical care, because there is nothing left in Gaza. And over the past 1 month, Israel has broken the ceasefire and accelerated its full-on destruction of the Gaza Strip. Now, how can I say that this is genocide? Because when these acts, which are criminal in and of themselves, are committed with intent to destroy a group as such, then we are in the presence of a genocide. Genocide is the destruction of a group as such, the intentional destruction of a group as such. And my question is, if this is not a genocide, what is it? because the Palestinians have been targeted as such, dehumanized as such, indicated like a nation responsible for what has happened on October 7. Let's forget the decades of abuses, violations, indignities, and humiliations that the Palestinians have endured. And not because what they have endured justifies the crimes that have been committed against Israeli civilians, but because, as the Secretary General of the United Nations said, the violence of October 7 didn't happen in a vacuum. And so the Palestinians have been targeted as such and have been hit as such, killed or tortured and named or orphaned and left homeless or starved as such. And I wish we could use the past tense in this because it continues. And as we see the unfolding of the violence in its most extreme form in the Gaza Strip, it's not that the Palestinians in the West Bank are spared from all this, because in fact they are experiencing violence, death, and destruction in another way. Of course, the West Bank cannot be carpet bombed as the Gaza Strip has been, because there are hundreds of thousands of settlers living there, 800,000 settlers living there. So the carpet bombing is not an option. And still, I mean, Israel has been destroying, leveling to the ground large areas of the West Bank as well, refugee camps, telling everyone that they need to go. So there is this atmosphere of ethnic cleansing. And people, right? I mean, the new normal is just to talk about voluntary migration. Oh, the United States are promoting the voluntary migration of the Palestinians. There is nothing voluntary about what's happening to the Palestinians, and nothing voluntary, in fact, that has happened, that has been part of the Palestinians' endeavor for the past decades, really, as a collective. So again, if this is not a genocide, what is it?
Yeah. I think you mentioned October 7th, and I started speaking about that earlier. That is one of the big misconceptions or construsions that is being used by Israel as their show of force. And so people that don't have insight into the history of, like you said, many centuries of the oppression and apartheid that was enacted through Israel on Palestine. People don't see that and don't understand it. And so now they only become part of the conversation since the 7th of October. And again, like most of us, and I agree with you, we do not support anybody killing civilians on either side. And so nobody is saying that we forget about the lives lost during the September 7th of October. But you cannot have a situation where an attack of 20, 30 people justifies the complete erasure of another nation. That is unacceptable on any means. And so, how do we deal with people who keep on using the 7th of October? Or how do we educate some of the people who don't have an understanding on how we need to deal with what had happened on the 7th of October and how it cannot justify what continued to happen in Palestine?
Look, if 18,000 children are not enough to talk about something else, and not because I want to forget or I want to downplay the brutality and the violence of October 7, but I don't want to downplay the brutality that preceded October 7 either. I mean, I keep on saying there have been so many wars in Gaza, and it's not that the Palestinians don't suffer in their bones and in their flesh and in their souls like the Israelis do. I mean, no, the Palestinians have lost family members, the Palestinians have seen atrocities committed against many of them. And so, again, I without downplaying the violence of October 7, now, 17 months later, how are we talking about that again? Why? Because again, there is, and I spare no energies, no effort in trying to convince those who do not deny, who think to follow what's happening and still say yes, but October 7. No, I mean, your moral compass is broken if you're someone who uses these arguments, because whatever has happened on October 7, it should be, of course, accounted for. But what has followed October 7 is not accountability, is really fury, pure revenge. So what I want to invest my efforts on is in informing people who might not know. And there is still a significant number of people who do not know, thanks to the pathetic media, but also thanks to the oppression that is happening at the political level. Now, I would like, what I think that should be done is really to help people connect the dots. Now, people in Germany are probably the most aware in Europe of the risks of not protecting freedom of expression and freedom of assembly as a universal value. You cannot just close one eye and say, okay, it's happening on Palestine, and think that the system will continue to remain protective. It will not, because meanwhile, once, the power has tested the resistance or the lack of resistance, it will continue with abuses. This is in history. So again, I think that what is to be done now is to connect the dots and make sure that in the face of the huge injustice that continues to be inflicted on the Palestinian people, and the fact that it cannot be spoken about even, this is what should alert everyone that the system we belong to has problems and needs to be fixed. And there is no way that it's going to fix itself. We need to make sure that it's fixed.
I would venture to go a little bit further back and just understand a little bit of history, because one other thing that and so just to say, we're having two audiences today. So we have some from Germany, and we have South Africa also connected, with us being
I didn't know.
Yeah, we're a South African organization, and our colleagues and friends are part of the university in Germany, and so we collaborate and work together. And so that's the context. And so part of what have been problematic with some of the religious people on either side is this idea that the people in Israel is the people also in the Bible. So this is God's people, it is their land, and God has destined them to be in this land, and so we need to defend God's people. And so I would like to also put that on the table for you to just dispel from your own perspective this nonsense that people have been running with and have been preached in churches across the world as if it's fact.
Yeah, I cannot really comment on that because it's really outside the realm of my competence. But again, for me, look, I respect religion and religion beliefs and of everyone, right? But as a global society, we have given each other rules. Our states have given themselves rules so that all of us can coexist within the difference of our religion. So the issue I have with claiming the rights over land on through divine will is that it defies the law that is universally applicable, and is there to protect all of us, to create guarantees for all of us and protect all of us. So the moment you bring in an alternative system, you either create an exception to maintain which you will have to use the force because it's unfair, it's unjust, or you will open the way to so many exceptions that then the system will lose its capacity to exist as a system, which is what is happening today to the multilateral order. There are so many hits that the system is taking. I mean, from the member states say that the International Criminal Court is anti-Semitic or is a corrupt institution and needs to be sanctioned, and so its members. Or the fact that other member states say, well, I will leave the organization so as to allow this politician to visit the country, and then I might join again. What is this? Are we children or what? I mean, and not to be disrespectful toward children, but again, are we in primary school, or are we adult, responsible individuals who understand what the law is, and that the law is to be applied to everyone, because this is what the system is made of. Otherwise, if we are there making our rules every day, again, it's no longer an organized society. And this is where all of us should be worried, because this is already what's happening before our eyes.
Yeah, I think you make an important point where this international platforms or bodies were put together to make sure that post World War II that we maintain peace across the world for all nations. But we have seen that these organizations have been used as tools where it comes down hard on countries with less power, and those with more power then controls and use it for their own benefits and purposes, as we see at the moment that what is happening. So you mentioned the ICJ and South Africa having the case currently at the ICJ. So in terms of the findings from the court, what is it with the international world of nations that have not brought them to this conversation in a way where they have called Israel out, called it to order, and stopped what is happening in Palestine? Why do you think that is happening?
Then member states don't intervene to stop it?
Yeah.
Look, it's a mixed. I think that, I mean, I'm coming to realize that this is not new. What is new is the intensity and the scale and the fact that it's feasible. But again, I'm very touched to also be listened to by people in South Africa, because I think that people in the global majority, and what I call the global South, for me, it's better to call it global majority. People in the global majority understands better instinctively what colonialism is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, Europeans, the way they have expanded in the last 500 years around the world, has been mainly through domination, subjugation, and oppression. So colonialism per se, the moment someone lands in your land, taking resources, pushing you out, segregating you, and treating you differently on the ground of a superior race, there is a problem. So a colonialism is quintessentially illiberal and driven by lack of humanity. So do we think that we have got rid of it? I mean, the system over the past 8 years? Hell no. And this is why colonialism didn't disappear when the UN was created. It's been thanks to the struggle of in former colonies, people in former colonies, that we have finally arrived to the codification of the right of self-determination as a positive right, as a right to exist as a people and to determine oneself as a people. However, in the context of Israel-Palestine, we still see that dynamic of a country, which I understand is not the typical settler colony, because it's not that Jewish people had a state and went and colonized another state. However, after 1948, Jewish Israelis have had a state. And since 1967, even if we want to forget what has happened to the Palestinians in the land that they called their homeland, before 1967. As of 1967, Israel has continued to expand its presence beyond the land that had been recognized as, again, it has never had borders, but 55% of historical Palestine was supposed to become Israel, and instead it's 78, and it's never enough. So Israel has continued to expand its control over the land through a military presence and by taking resources. Is it new? No, Israel has been doing that for 57 years. And where were the other member states? Western states. This is the climax of the decade-long illegality. And this is why I say this genocide is a tragedy foretold, because all of a sudden there was this opportunity to get rid of the Palestinians. And again, not about justifying or downplaying October 7 and the violence that October 7 signified, of course not. But the Palestinians now have been referred to ever since as something that is to be pulled out, uprooted. And is it new? No, it's not even new. So this language, the dehumanization of the Palestinians had been so normalized. And even now, if I think of it as a former UN person who used to work as a UN official in Palestine, I say, but even when we were there, when I was there, we have normalized the illegality of the occupation. We have never challenged the root causes. We have operated within the perimeter of the space that Israel allowed to the United Nations to function. But Israel had no right to be in the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. So the answer is, no one is doing anything, because fundamentally, the life of the Palestinian, and it pierces my heart to say that, but the reality is this: the life of the Palestinians is not a concern in the slightest to most Western policymakers, and I would go as far as to say to many policymakers in the world, because it's not that outside of the West or the global minority you see this curtailing of economic, diplomatic, political, and military ties with Israel. So Israel has become like a factory of military and surveillance techniques that have been tested on the Palestinians and used abroad and purchased abroad. So you see the interconnection of, between the Israel's unlawful endeavor and the complicity of others is so pervasive that I keep on saying, if Palestine was a crime scene, it would have the fingerprints of all of us. And when I say all of us, I mean all of us. So this is why today we really have to ask ourselves, do we want to continue to let it happen, or really want to use the sense of resentment and disgust that we have in the face of the slaughter of innocent people on an everyday basis and say, enough? This is the last settler colony that we want to deal with and needs to be resolved. This is why I'm so happy that South Africa was the state that led that case, that is leading this case before the ICJ, because South Africa has broken the chains of 300 years of colonialism, the last 50 of which were called apartheid. But again, each settler colonial endeavor is apartheid in itself. And the only way to undo it is to see it and react as a humanity against it. We are not there yet.
Yeah. I think that's important to understand why South Africa got involved and took the case to the ICJ. I think the importance around that is, as a country, we come from apartheid, we come from colonialism, and we know the impact that it had. And to the extent where, when we look at Palestine, we cannot, it started as far back as Nelson Mandela and once before him. When he was even in his younger days, Nelson Mandela and other politicians were saying that we stand with the people of Palestine and we oppose Israel for its suppression and oppression of the people of Palestine. So this has not started yesterday. It's been coming along for a very long time, as you say. And so people that only come to the party today want to have this deep informed conversation about something that happened on October 7th, just the other day. And so when we think about all of that in the context of what you mentioned, we're dealing with, again, like you say, all our fingerprints are on that crime scene because we are all, as a world, um, currently looking at what is happening there, and none of us are able to stop it within our own powers. But we're also not holding our governments accountable globally to do what they need to do in order to stop this genocide and allow these people to live in a country that is theirs. I mean, it's a country that was theirs from the beginning. These people were brought in. They colonized that part of the Palestinian people's land, and now we're sitting with, like you say, the last settler um, state, which America and all these Western powers have an interest in, and so that's why they support that. So culminating into where we are today, and people are looking into that. As you said, you can't look away from 18,000 children being murdered. There's no justification in any book or any conversation or any way you play it. There's never a justification for that. And so when we're moving forward, the question is, what does healing mean in the context of the trauma in this historical context, and the conscious and the unfolding of what is happening now in real time? How does healing look for the people of Palestine?
Interesting. I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask this question. You should ask Gabor Mate. I have no idea. I'm trying to keep healing myself for the scars of looking at children and parents and grandmothers being slaughtered after being starved and made homeless and mutilated for months and months and months and no hands inside. So look, something that I often say is that today acting in solidarity with Palestine, because this is clearly there have been other genocides in my lifetime. The Bosnian genocide. I was a young. I mean, I was a young adult, but still, it was my lifetime. And so the Rwanda genocide, and still we didn't know in real time. I mean, it was not publicly available as it is today. The shocking thing of this genocide is that it's happening. I mean, we wake up in the morning and we, at least, then depends on the algorithm, but my phone and computer system, this is filled with images of what's happening. And as it's happening for me, for many. And I think it's an act of sanity, self-preservation, and healing to unite with others. For example, for those protesting in Europe, they say, why we should keep on protesting? For three reasons. First of all, do that for yourself, as this act of sanity and taking care of yourself. So at least you know that you are not crazy. You are not the crazy one. There are other human beings like you who cannot stomach the scenes of children turned into smithereens on an everyday basis with our money and political support. And while our countries keep on trading with the states, this is the first. The second thing I say, keep on uniting, because your government listens to you. You think that it doesn't, but it does in fact. And in places where there are elections, this might make a difference. And the other thing is that keep on protesting, keep on taking the streets, because the Palestinians see you and they see that they have not been abandoned. They're not being forgotten. There are people ready to sacrifice something in their life. Why Palestinians look at me like with this sense of awe? Because they see the kind of abuses I personify today, so much of what anyone standing in solidarity with the Palestinians has to endure. And again, for me, it's not even so. I don't think I'm standing in solidarity with the Palestinians. I am mandated by the United Nations to report on the violations that take place in the occupied Palestinian territory. So, what shall I do? Not talk about the legal qualifications of a military operation which has destroyed 75, 80% of the homes. We can't even count, which has left 40% of the children in Gaza 40% of the adult population in Gaza is taking care of children who are not even their own. So, and hundreds of families, 5 generations have been wiped off the map. So, how shall I behave? It's not solidarity with the Palestinian people, it's making sense of international law. So, I keep on saying that we have various ways out of here. We can continue nosediving into this abyss of lack of humanity and lawlessness, or we can unite as people. This is something more to the people in Germany than in South Africa, but keep on breaking the silence, keep on speaking about genocide. I know you are taking a great risk on yourself. In Germany, going to Germany was extremely traumatizing for me. And so I have a feeling of how lonely you might feel right now. But this is why you need to keep on uniting. It seems that you are not making a difference, but you are, because what's happening in Germany is being seen, and Germany is being criticized because of that. And we have no alternative than to resist peacefully to this. But of course, actions also have to be better coordinated. And I personally heal through action. I don't heal by removing myself from the crime scene that Palestine is. I need to be active. This is what I felt during the 2012 war or during the 2014 war against Gaza. So I encourage everyone to be as active as you can to do the right thing. And what is the right thing? First of all, push for accountability. Accountability of your leaders, of businesses, of policymakers, and also newspapers. So there should be more organized actions against people who are personally responsible for the corporate choices that were made, and keep on uniting struggles. I mean, I was very, very surprised to see that in Germany, the movement is really very grassroots, but the big names, apart from Amnesty International or the European Constitutional or the Center for Constitutional Rights, not many organizations are speaking out. Not many organizations are denouncing what's happening, why the protesters are beaten up so furiously. And this is a problem. We need to tell them this is also about them, who they are as Germans. So again, healing is requires action, in my view.
Yeah, I think that's an important point you're making. Is the call to action is to do whatever you can in the space that you are to hold those accountable that in some way or form are fueling the war, either through, like you say, the corporate business or whatever means it is. But I mean, our voices in opposition, like you say, while it feels like nothing, it has a role to play in calling out this wicked people that are fueling the genocide. You also said that, and you keep on mentioning it. This is not the first time that we see things like this happening. You mentioned Rwanda and other wars where things like this had happened as well. But specifically in the context of Palestine and Israel, there's October 7 that is constantly mentioned, and on the other side we have the Nakba. How are we here again? And or talk to us about the Nakba and how that affects the Palestinian people even today.
the Nakba, and whomever knows the Palestinians know that the Nakba is very present. Is very present because it's such a traumatic, defining moment in the history of the Palestinian people. Because I often say, in other genocides, there were people belonging to those groups who were not directly affected. So while, look, the Holocaust was monstrous. Again, the magnitude, the industrial destruction of a people as such was unfathomable. And again, the magnitude is shocking. The numbers of Jewish people, but also Roma and Sinti, we never think of this. The Roma and Sinti are still heavily discriminated in Europe, despite the fact that they were also genocided during the genocide. The Nazi fascist genocide. There is one thing that is very specific to the Palestinians. The fact is that no living Palestinian has not been affected directly or indirectly by the Nakba. Why? Because they had a homeland that stopped existing after the creation of the State of Israel. It was fragmented. It was, again, it was followed by the creation of these segments of land, and the Palestinians have been scattered, have become a diaspora. So this is a nation largely in exile. It's either in exile or under occupation. There is no Palestinian who's not, apart from a small number who were already in Latin America during the 1920s and were never allowed by the British colonizer to return. All the rest have been affected. So the Nakba is living through the veins of the Palestinians. And there is an Israeli friend and colleague who told me once, he said, while unlike us, Jewish people, we have had our immense trauma. And I parenthesis, I think that the trauma is really not just for the Holocaust, but the fact that the Jewish people have suffered massacres after massacres after massacres. I mean, they have really been heavily persecuted in Europe. From Spain to Russia, the actions against the Jewish people, but also other minorities. This is the thing. We need to reflect on what white Christian Europeans have done to others who didn't correspond to the pure race. And so, however, she was saying, we Jewish people have had our closing. We have come to terms with what has happened to us. And the Holocaust is commemorated across the world. And there is an awareness about anti-Semitism. The Palestinians have never come to that close. And far from that. Rather the contrary, they kept on enduring patterns of Nakba. I mean, there is an organization, a Palestinian organization, Badil, which has called it the silent Nakba, the fact that Palestinians have continued to be forcibly displaced after 47, 48, after 1967. And now, more than before, Palestinians have seen and are seeing what's happening to those in Gaza and to those in the West Bank, like if a reenactment of the Nakba, but with means of warfare of the 21st century. So of course, the trauma is immense, and how to heal? Well, first of all, we need to stop the violence. That is the first step.
Yeah. So South Africa has the case with the ICJ at the moment. There's been some significant wins in the court, but it hasn't translated onto the ground because Israel have constantly gone against the court. And so one of the things that we need to ask is the legal mechanisms that's being used now good enough to end this genocide, Or what else do you think we need in terms of contributing to the struggle to get us to a point where we can at least stop the genocide?
Look, I don't think that the problem, I know that there are many voices, including among legal scholars who are critical of the international legal system. I am a huge admirer, and I also, although I'm not from the global majority, but I'm a huge admirer, and I feel very indebted to the TWAIL, the third world approach to international law, as a system of critical thinking applied to legal studies. And still, I think that today the problem is not with international law per se, not with the system of rules that member states have given themselves to regulate their relations or to regulate the relations between the state and its citizens or residents, human rights. I think that the system is with the system itself and the fact that it's unequal. And so the multilateral order doesn't function on an equal basis, but triggered by stronger nations, stronger powers, stronger states. And here, clearly, we see while we have a multipolar order, still the United States is still the most powerful state that seem not very interested in preserving or respecting the multilateral order. And so we are faced with a challenge and a dilemma. How are we going to make the system work so that the system can stop this? But if the problem is within the system itself, where are we going to operate? And this is the dilemma today. And we are in this schizophrenic mode. And I live it myself, because on the one hand, I keep on talking to member states, urging them, imploring them to open their eyes and to change their conduct, because this is really contributing to the dismantlement of the system as we have known it. It has not served everyone equally. We in the West have been benefited much more than others. But this is why I'm saying, even my fellow Europeans, my fellow in the global minority, say, open your eyes. It's going to be very bad for us. There is not such a response, because in a way, the system has made us so isolated, so fragile, so preoccupied with our own individual induced needs, like which clothes I'm going to wear next summer, and or serious preoccupation, my job, my mortgage, how am I going to feed my kids? So we do not function as a group, as a collective body. We are all fragmented, and this is the problem. So we would need a real cultural revolution, and it might take place, it might be happening. I do see this brewing, but my concern now is this is too slow to stop the genocide. We need to be faster, and it's not happening.
Yeah. In talking about we need to be faster, should we see a military response from neighbors and other nations to make it faster, to get it done quicker? Because it seems like the legal framework and the diplomatic conversations has not gotten us to the point where the seriousness of stopping have been enacted. So do we need to see from global neighbors and people in the global body, do we need to see military power from them in order to stop this? Because one, it could cause World War III, but two, if this is the standard for human rights where we devalue a nation in order to remove them and wipe them without shedding a tear or thinking twice about it, how do we do it the next time when we choose another nation to devalue them and to take them out?
Now, look, I think that I wouldn't go there for one reason, that violence breeds violence, and there is nothing to gain in an escalation of military violence. I think that what is to be done is to stop trading with Israel. But seriously, I mean, no one, and very few states have taken the decision, the determination to stop trading with Israel. In fact, look, while the economy in Israel has resented the last 16 months, and there are many businesses who have shut down, and yeah, for average Israelis, the situation is much more difficult today than before, the economic situation. But also, I mean, I don't think that Israelis are really in a safe space right now, mentally, collectively. The stock exchange market in Israel keeps on growing, keeps on doing well, in fact, because the military industry is going very well. So, and investments continue. This is why I'm saying probably if we make the effort not to see what's happening in terms of nation states, but rather bodies of influence, I think that it's clear that there is a heavily militarized oligarchy, which connects most of the members of the global minority and others in their outer circle. This is the system that we need to be aware of and scared of. It's this hyper militarization, which now coupled with technology, it's really dangerous. And again, I think that in 2 years from now, or in 5 years from now, if it doesn't go incredibly better, we will all be in a much more dangerous world. So I would use diplomacy and economic measures. But also, let me tell you something, Edwin, and something important as well. I think that I said it when I was in Denmark a couple of months ago, as I was coming out of a plane, landing in Denmark, reading the news of the US president announcing the plan of the Gaza Riviera. And I said, this is the time where 191 member states of the international community need to gather together because they have nothing to gain from this nonsense. Nothing. It's very dangerous. It's immoral, irresponsible, but more than anything, it is unlawful. So you need, and I don't see this discussion happening, for example, between African countries and European countries. France has started a little bit, this latest trip that the French president did to Egypt. I think that goes in that direction, and still is not premised upon, we have learned the lesson from the past. This is an opportunity for us to turn the page as European countries, European nations. We really atone for the past, the colonial past, and what we have done, also what we have left happen to the Palestinians. We want to really turn the page and let's open a new era of engagement and nation-to-nation recognition of states in Africa, for example, or in Asia. This would be revolutionary. We're not there. We are too scared of the change, of stepping into the unknown, an equal relationship with states from the global majority.
That's a powerful picture to see, because I think that we do have some weak leaders and we need more powerful leaders to step up and to step, like you say, into the unknown. We want you to have one final position that you need to place on record today. And I'm going to frame the picture for you, right? You are sitting in a room with all these world leaders sitting there at the moment with what is happening in Palestine. What is the words that you are saying to them? And what is your call to action, not just for them in that room, but for the people that follow them and that have put them in power?
I would tell them, do you see the younger generations? Do you see how much they're struggling and they're moving? They're struggling for environmental justice. They're struggling against the violence of identity politics. I do see the younger generation being so much better than us in general. in general. Maybe I'm biased because I always go around and meet these fantastic students who really want a better world, and they have very practical solutions. So I say they are desperate, looking for principled leaders. Everything that we are doing is known, charted territory. Let's try something different for once. Let's give ourselves the chance to do things differently for the younger generation, because sooner, frankly, to be very honest, with Ras Sigal, I agree that in 40 years' time, Israel-Palestine might be desert. If the global warming continues expanding as it is, and rooting as it is, and destroying the planet as it is. And therefore, we really need to care for each other and protect ourselves. And I know, and I would say that out of principle, but thinking that I wouldn't convince anyone. Because if we have gone so far, it's really for the lack of morality, the lack of ethical principles of most of our oligarchs, I'm afraid.
Sad but true. Chiara, I don't know if we have time for one or two questions from the floor before Francesca have to leave us. If we do.
Maybe time for one or two, but I've heard that there are future commitments for you, Francesca, so we don't want to hold you, just to make sure you can keep track of your time schedule. However, if there are questions, we would invite the audience to place them in the chat now.
Two quick questions.
Yes.
Can I say something meanwhile
Yes.
Because I'm reading Nesse Basser's comment. The Western world is ignorant. The Western world, there are also people like me. So many. And so many are really fighting and losing their jobs and facing. The thing is that we are not united. We need to be able to see each other across borders. And this is why my motto these days is breaking the silence and breaking the silos. We need to think horizontally and how we are going to make a difference, how we're going to talk to each other, and how we can unite different struggles. There are nice people in the West.
Yeah.
All right. I'm not seeing any questions, so.
Perfect.
So I can go back to my report.
Well, we appreciate you being here to talk to us about this critical conversation. We hope to speak to you again. We're hosting a conference in October this year here in South Africa. We would love for you to be part of that. So we will reach out again to set up a meeting and see if it's possible. But for today, thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for the work that you do. We are definitely more informed at this point, having talked to you. So thank you, and really, we all pray for resolution, and we pray that we will all sit here around this table one day, and being grateful for some leader that stood up and enacted justice for the Palestinian people.
Yes. What I was saying, don't you want to remember like Nelson Mandela? Don't you want to be European Nelson Mandela?
We need one.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Francesca.
Stay strong, everyone. Okay. Don't despair. We can make it, but we need to be more strategic.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Francesca.
Bye-bye.
Bye.